Well, gracious class, here it is. I can't believe it. We've made it through the entire semester, and this is the final lecture. This is the one that I saved to last, and it's a little indulgent on my part, I must admit, but this is the one that I've developed. This is, after all of these philosophies and theories and ideas, and that all the different authors that we've explored have expressed, this is the way that I explain it to my peeps. A couple of things need to be said. Remember that in the beginning of the semester, first part of the semester, prior to midterm, we were talking about goal setting. It's everything that you've grown up on, setting short, intermediate, long-term goals, developing some kind of a plan, and going from day to day and goal to goal and A to B. The second part of the semester was devoted to attainment, but any attainments or any achievements were made as a result of self-improvement. So you're constantly working on yourself, not just going for the goal, because you exist and you wear a lot of different hats. How's that sound? You may have a certain way of behaving when you're with your nuclear family, with your grandparents or with your parents or with your siblings, and certainly different than when you're with your buds and when you're with classmates or when you're at work or when you understand what I'm talking about. So the uh, the prospects and the idea of self improvement really appeals to me on a very visceral level, both personally and professionally. But I thought that I'd introduce my performance spheres, and that's what I call it, performance spheres. It's the spheres of performance. Um, because this is the way that I've managed over the years to explain motivation and explain problems that athletes may have on the field or the pitch or the court or the track or wherever. Um, it is based on self improvement. Now, remember, I had to have something that was catchy. I had to have something that was easily understood. Because when I'm sitting there, sometimes I'm talking to the athlete. Sometimes I'm talking to the athlete and perhaps their significant other. Sometimes I'm talking to the athlete, significant other, their coach, maybe their trainer, and maybe even their sponsor or sponsors. So I've got a big table here, and I got a wide variety of a range of understanding about the human condition. So I'd have some way, some method to put everybody on the same page and explain what's going on with that athlete, and so we can get all our oars in the water and all of them pulling in the same direction. So this is a little bit kitschy, but it served me so very, very well for the past 30 plus years. I've been in practice since 1986. A couple of other things need to be said. I'm going to show you the basic operation of it initially. And then I'm going to explain the evolution, because this isn't just something I dreamed up one night or, had too much wine and said, hey, wow, this sounds like a great one. No, this is an evolution, and it's been a thoughtfully considered evolution over a number of years. Well, since 1986. So do the math on that one. And I'll show you the evolution. Um, I've divided it into two, not because it's long, but I don't want you to get lost in the weeds. So please just kick back and enjoy and listen to what I have to say here and see if it resonates with you. Once again, caution you, if it resonates with you, embrace it, question me, look it up. Performance Spheres has been out there a while. I'm about to publish another book, Monumental Performance, and well, it's it's been an evolutionary type of a process. So let's just kind of get into it here, and I'll tell you what I tell my peeps. Well, before we even get into the entire realm of motivation in the human condition, we need to get back to something that we addressed in the very, very first lecture. Just some basic questions about the nature of man. And I like to illustrate these in dichotomous terms. In other words, is he this or is he that? And really what I'm doing is I'm giving you Hobson's choice, as the Brits would say. I'm giving you a an extreme versus an extreme. And of course, most everybody falls somewhere in the middle. But these, just go through these. Do you believe man is good or man is evil? Remember, we talked about this. Do you believe that good and evil exists in the world? And you probably say yes. Okay, then if that be the case, then begs the question, which one dominates in your world? In other words, the lenses through which you filter the world and the way that you interpret the world around you, which one of them dominates, good or evil? So, and the answer to the question here that really transcends this course, we get into it in the master's course, but it depends upon how your tuner is set. No, not your tuner fish, but a tuner, Tuner. How you are tuned. If you are tuned to look for good, you're going to find good, rapture, joy, enchantment, happiness all around you. But if your tuner is set to evil, if you're looking for horror, torment, or pain, anguish, it is sitting right next to the good. So it depends upon which one you are looking for, which one, and sometimes our lives, life throws you a bit of a curveball, and sometimes we get knocked in one direction or the other. Um, just when we're sitting around thinking that the world sucks, something occurs that restores our faith in the basic milk of human kindness, and such as it is, and such as it is dealing with the human condition. I'm hoping that you're looking at your fellow man around you, given the past couple of months here, because boy, some real veneer has come off the civilized world. Well, there we go. Is it civilized or is it anarchist? Is man a warrior or a pacifist? Bold or fearful? Industrious or lazy? Rigid or resilient? Or cooperative or oppositional? I don't know. And once again, guys, please, these are representative. This isn't exhaustive. For God's sake, if we sat down and just started listing dichotomies here that we could consider, we'd be here all day and all night. So, and I think this is interesting about dichotomies, because is it this or that? And people ask, I might have told you this in a previous lecture, so forgive me if I'm a wee bit redundant and repetitive, but people ask all the time, are you predator or are you prey? Well, I think that offers too few choices. And I came up with this one some years ago after discussions with one of my patients. He was the one who introduced me to it. He goes, no, Doc, you got to understand it. You got to ask, are you a fisherman? Are you a fish? Or are you bait? Wow. Oh, now that one's going to take a beer or two to kind of figure that one out. But anyway, this is just some basic questions before we get into it here. So let's get into the introduction to performance spheres. Well, it's based upon the process of self-improvement. So there's no surprise there. You know that I have an affinity for self-improvement. I was raised this way. It comes naturally to me, and it makes all the sense in the world. My father and my mother raised me in the Renaissance mold. In other words, I was raised to appreciate arts and sciences and crafts and music and poetry and sculpture and architecture and mathematics and chemistry. I mean, all things, anything that can't be answered instantly is worthy of investigation and experience, study, and analysis. So it's based upon the process of self-improvement. Remember, if you pay attention, you're always going to be involved in the process of self-improvement, because you're always going to see things that you could incorporate or things that you can do better. It addresses a rarefied human performance atmosphere. That's right. It's kind of like Maslow's pyramid. The more talented you are, the higher up the performance pyramid in your respective sport. And we're just confining our discussion to sport right now, but it doesn't have to be. It can be anything in life. It can be business, can be any of the Renaissance pursuits. But the higher up you go, the less competition there is, but the more formidable the competition is. So it integrates the 5, count them 5, guys, integrates the 5 spheres of the competitive athlete. And that's an evolutionary thing. And relax, I'll take you all through how I came up with these. Now, mastery, remember, the pursuit of mastery is the pursuit that you will never actually attain. But mastery requires attention to all spheres and not just the way that we default here in the West to the physical. That if you have a problem on the field, then you double down in the gym. That's oftentimes that's the very worst thing you can do. So there's a whole world out here, and that's the reason I came up with performance spheres, is in order to fully express the comprehensive nature of motivation. It's not just how much you can lift or how fast you can go or how high you can jump. This represents, remember, a 3-dimensional model. It's a sphere, a ball that continually grows in size. It's not just a line that goes up or down. So, all right. Well, let's see. How do we get into this thing? And I'm just going to kind of lead you through this here, and we'll see where we go. Okay. It begins with a mental image of the perfect execution of a skill. So what you get, and I don't care what this is, if you want to hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, you want to throw the ball at 100 miles an hour, you want to catch a pass, you want to tee off a golf ball, you want to serve a tennis ball, whatever it is, you begin with a mental image of perfect execution of the skill. You don't imagine yourself screwing up. You got it in your mind. You know exactly what you need to do. Matter of fact, if you need any help, you take a look at it. You watch it, but you get this perfect image in your mind. Once you've got the perfect mental image, this leads to a physical attempt to replicate the perfect image. So once you got this image in your mind, now it's your time to go and practice and see if you can do that thing. There, the ball's teed up. Take your three wood, pow, see if you can knock it down the fairway. And this is how I introduce it. I give this little entree, and then here. That's the mental, which is a picture of perfection, and it leads to a physical attempt. So that's the first 2. Notice there's 5 spheres. There's the first 2 of them right there. Now, the assessment that you give after you take a look at it, you went ahead and took a swing at that ball. Did you hit it? If you did it go where you wanted it to? Were you disappointed? Were you ashamed? Were you saddened? Were you kind of awestruck? What kind of emotional response, good, bad, or ugly, did you have from that? So you got this mental mental image of perfection. Try to physically attempt to replicate that perfection, and it leads to an emotional, leads to this right here. And don't pay attention to the colors here. The colors are just there for entertainment value. They really signify nothing. It's just kind of keeping everybody intrigued. And believe me, when I'm sitting around with sponsors and spouses and significant others and coaches and trainers and athletes, and oh boy, it at least gives them something that they can hang on to. Okay, so there we are. There's the first 3. Now, the desire to improve because you want to get better. It leads to the technical sphere for possible refinement. Now, I have to admit, I didn't include this. Technical was the very last of the, and you'll see this later on. Technical was the very last of the spheres that I incorporated, but I got it from Dr. Orlick in his Wheel of Excellence, because he said, remember, he had mental, physical, and technical. Those are the only 3 things that he had to explain the entirety of human motivation. And I thought it didn't make any sense to me, but it's come to my attention that things are happening in the technical arena, especially in the field of exercise science and exercise physiology and kinesiology. It's happening so fast that if you don't have the technical sphere and you don't have your fingers in that pie, you're probably going to get dusted, because things are changing so rapidly, so quickly. So anyway, the desire to improve leads to the technical sphere for possible refinement. Now, what is that? Well, it could be diagnostics. It might be a mocap, motion capture. We've got motion capture in 6 dimensions. We've got right, left, fore, aft, and above and below. Matter of fact, out in Claremont, we've got that in the pool too for our swimmers, so we can high speed, high def, breakdown, super slow, and it's interesting because we can break it down into each and every subtle movement. Objective quantification. You could get an expert opinion. You can get an instructor or something to give you some feedback. You can resort to film or video. It might be something, guys. It might be something as simple as watching yourself in a mirror or a store window or something while you're sitting there and you're moving, and you can see a little bit. It's called biofeedback. That's what it is. So you've got this technical sphere, and I say, but then there's a crossroads. This is how it looks. So it just keeps getting prettier and prettier. Mental perfection, physical attempt. The emotional reaction, technical for refinement. But there's the fifth sphere. I get a lot of pushback on this too, guys. So bear with me on it, okay? Just hang in there. Hang in there. It's the spiritual sphere that determines if further attempts will be made. Now, I initially got, and I still do from time to time, some pushback from some of my very secular or atheist clients and patients. It's like, hey, doc, don't try to push that Bible stuff on me. I went, whoa, hey, Sparky. It's got nothing to do, spiritual has nothing to do with religion. You need to make the distinction to that right away. There are plenty of people who live very spiritually centered lives, meaningful lives, but they never set foot in church or synagogue or temple or mosque. No, they don't. And yet there are those who go to meeting every single week and sit in the front row and put $20 in the pass around plate and make sure everybody sees them. And then they go out and play screw your buddy for the rest of the week, kind of like buying an indulgence back in the Middle Ages. So it is the spiritual sphere. Now, what is spiritual? Look, if your spiritual grounding is your religion, great, good. That makes it real easy because it comes with an instruction book and everything, okay? But we usually talk about the spiritual aspect of, especially in athletics, in terms of passion for the game, this love for the sport, love for the game, that kind of thing. Now, you might say, well, that's just kind of emotional. No. Actually, it goes beyond emotion because emotion doesn't really explain those guys in Green Bay who, in the middle of a blizzard, are sitting up there in the top of the bleachers in Speedos with letters painted on their chests, on their bare chests. Well, there's probably more going on there that really needs to be examined. But now I've got that image in your mind, you're probably gonna hate me for the rest of the lecture. But anyway, how about a can-do attitude? How about guilt? How about just tenacity? How about just grit, self-challenge, etc.? There are all these different things that comprise the spiritual, whatever it is, the je ne sais quoi, as the French would say. But it gives meaning. It makes the pursuit meaningful. And it's going to be the determining factor if you're going to go around the circle again. Well, what circle? This circle right here. So you start with mental perfection. It goes to a physical attempt. You get an emotional reaction. You go back for a little technical refinement. And the spiritual is going to determine if you're going to go around the circle again. Because you can bail at any one of these. You can bail anywhere along the line. And I'm going to illustrate that right now. Because I make mention that the technical and spiritual spheres may not even be brought into the equation. I mean, they might, but maybe not. The emotional sphere may dominate and training ceases. Now, what does that mean? Well, here you go. You got this mental image of perfection. You try to physically attempt it, and you know what? You suck. You really suck. And so you say, forget it, man. I'm out of here. I'm done. boom, throw your stuff in the back of the locker or maybe the trunk of the car, slam the door, and boom, you're out of there. Now, notice, if you will, I've got the technical sphere right here. And the reason I put this here is the little arrow here to the right of emotional, where the negative reaction is so negative that it causes you, or it prompts you to just give up, forget about it. The technical sphere, I leave that in there because it's always there. It's still there. All you have to do is maybe, get a drink of water. Just, before you get all ticked off, peed off, get a drink of water, take a couple of deep breaths, consult that technical again, and go ahead and see if you can do it a couple more times. This gets back to that discussion we have when coaches mistakenly tell athletes that they're not trying hard enough. No, it's not that they're not trying hard enough. This is an excellent illustration of this. They're not trying long enough, or they're not trying often enough. That's where persistence, perseverance, determination, commitment, discipline, all of those words come into play. Okay, so a little bit about this just before we kind of sign off on the first section here, and then we'll get into the second section when I tell you the evolution and the operation of this. Each of the 5 spheres may be examined individually, but they may only be understood collectively because they have meaning relative to each other. There's a reason why each one, they're constantly in a dynamic flux. And I'll explain that in just a second. Each of the 5 spheres is interdependent. If you have a deficit in one, it can be made up for an increase in another one of the spheres. And I'll hang with me on this. Just hang with me. So each of the 5 spheres may be examined individually. And that's kind of an interesting commentary about here in the West. We scientists here in the West, we have this penchant and this desire to take things apart all the time. We want to break it down into its constituent parts and then look at it. The problem with that is that when you break things down and you examine them independently and individually, you take them out of context, and they no longer have the meaning that they did when they were embedded with everything else. See, it's a system. It's not a collection of 1 or 2 little things jumped into a blender. It's not the way that it is. So, all the spheres are in a constant dynamic state of flux. And here, I use this just to illustrate. Notice, if you will, they're all different colors, and yet they're all beautifully symmetrical, and they're all nicely juxtaposed upon each other, and they're all the same size. Some guys, I've never seen a patient looks like this. If I saw a patient looks like this, there's nothing wrong with them. They're fine. Good grief, it would never even dawn on them to come see me. It wouldn't, because they're nice and balanced, and they're centered, and it's working, and there's no deficit and there's no imbalance. So, all right, let me just kind of get you into how I started with this, the basic evolution. The original idea, remember, I've been in martial arts since I was 6, so I've been in martial arts in dozens of different styles and different forms for 60 years. So the original idea came from my martial arts studies, and I was introduced to this at a very, very young age. I really didn't have a full appreciation for what it meant, but it gave me, at least in a child's mind, a rudimentary understanding of decision-making and the contrast. And here's that word again, dichotomies, the black-white, up-down, male-female, right-left, night-day, any different contrast. And the important thing to understand here is that when you use dichotomies, nothing stands alone. The thing exists. Day exists because there is night, and night exists because there is day. And that's an important concept, because when you start to examine things and you want to try to, especially when you do something beyond being sympathetic, if you want to be empathetic, you need to understand and have a full appreciation for that other thing, because you don't, well, none of us do. We only know what we know. And that's kind of a cute way of putting it, but we only know what we know. And it's sad that we do only know what we know, because what we don't know outweighs what we do know infinity to one. So it doesn't matter how much you know, you're never going to know as much as you don't know. I know it sounds like I'm playing mind games with you, but I don't know whether you've ever really thought about this, because this is what happens when you start getting into this and you begin to unlock some of the secrets that are surprisingly hiding in plain sight. Good grief, guys! Don't you remember the Joseph Campbell lecture, The Hero's Journey, Hero with a Thousand Faces? I might have just kind of smacked a couple of you upside the head and maybe called you to action, make you realize you're living in the ordinary world. Hmm. Or not. Or not. Okay, anyway, the mind-body connection. See, it's only here in the West that we talk about the mind-body connection. In the East, the Asian philosophy, there is no difference. The mind and the body are absolutely united. You cannot separate them. To separate them is once again to take things out of context, and you're doing no one a favor there. So it's a yin yang. I don't really want to get caught up in this too much, because the yin and yang energies are the two male and female energies found in qigong, which is Asian medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. Anyway, it deals with dichotomies, and the original yin yang, and I'm going to show you this here in just a second. I thought the model was too limiting because it seemed to offer too few options. And I'm sure you've all seen this right here. And this is typically a yin yang, even though the white and the black dot are later depictions. Originally, it was just a white and a black swirl. And notice, if you will, it's not just a white and a black circle cut in half, where half is black, half's white. No, it is illustrating this way. It is suggesting that the black is pushing into the white and the white is pushing into the black. And it further emphasizes the necessity for both and the appreciation for both, because one cannot exist without the other. So, as a boy, and a matter of fact, it was all the way until I was in my late teens, even my late adolescence, that it began to dawn on me, and I sought out some guidance on this as to what this meant, because I thought it would be either or. And you know what? When things are either or and you're a child, it's kind of freeing because you don't get caught up in the minutia, and you don't get caught up in the details or anything else. Like, it's either this or it's that, right? Okay, then, hey, have a sandwich and be about your business. But I had a master who explained it to me. He said, when you look at this, all you see is black and all you see is white, with a clear demarcation between the two. And as a matter of fact, you pay less attention to the black and to the white, and much more attention to that S that's scribed in the center of the symbol itself. He said, you might want to start thinking in terms of viewing it this way. It's a gradient. There is no total blackness except on the far right, and there is no total whiteness except on the far left. As you move towards the center, the black becomes grayer and then becomes lighter towards white, and the white becomes grayer and blacker towards black. So you see it. And this is the best one that I can come up with. I'm probably going to have my wife, who's an artist, go ahead and paint me something that doesn't have that S as clearly scribed, because that's misleading. That's how they get you. That's how it sucks you in. You begin to notice that, and you don't notice the gradations. So anyway, that's the yin and yang, and that was my very first step in the journey to trying to understand the human condition. And I've been an ardent student for the past 60 years, and I'm still learning. And sometimes I surprise myself. You, I surprise myself with how little I know. And I'm always reminded of Da Vinci on his deathbed. His final words were, "Not yet." Anyway, All right, gosh, let's take a deep breath here. I'm going to go get a glass of wine or something, perhaps. My throat is killing me. We've been lecturing here for 30 minutes, and I'm a little out of practice. So, anyway, this is the end of part one. And when you're ready, we'll go ahead and start jamming on part two, and I'll explain the evolution and the application.